Our first tipping point tonight, why do we have classified information if it's acceptable to leak it to the press? Here's what's happening. General Mike Flynn spoke to the Russian ambassador on the phone on December 29th, before Trump was sworn into office. On that phone call, General Flynn discussed the sanctions placed against Russia by the Obama administration. Flynn then told the White House that he did not discuss those sanctions. Flynn lied. But the reason we know all this is because that phone call was recorded by our intelligence agencies, and somebody leaked that information. That information was classified. Leaking classified information is against the law. President Trump says whomever leaked classified information will be held to account, and on that point, I agree with him. There's a reason we classify information: to protect our people, because when our enemies have knowledge of our secrets, they use it to hurt us. Take a look.
But more importantly, the people that gave out the information to the press should be ashamed of themselves, really ashamed. He didn't just call Russia. He called and spoke to both ways. I think there were 30-some-odd countries. He's doing the job. You know, he was just doing his job. The thing is, he didn't tell our vice president properly, and then he said he didn't remember. So either way, it wasn't very satisfactory to me.
With me now, history professor and author of Obama's America, a transformative vision of our national identity, Ian Reifowitz. Ian, good to see you.
Always good to be here, Liz.
All right, Ian, let's start with this question of the day today. And it's very simple, very straightforward. Why do we have classified information, Ian, if it's acceptable to leak it to the press like we've seen in the past couple days?
It's an important question, Liz, and I'm glad that I have the opportunity to speak on it. I just want to say first, it is important to recognize that it's in Mr. Trump's interest to shift the story to leaks from what the real story is, which is the ties between Flynn and perhaps other members of his administration and Russia. But it is an important question. I think there has to be a very high bar for when a leak is appropriate. I think for the most part, leaks are inappropriate. They are always a crime, and the person who is doing the leaking has to be willing to take responsibility for their actions. To me, it's a two-pronged test. One, does the leak itself endanger national security and put lives at risk? If the answer is yes, then it's an almost impossibly high bar to clear.
Right, but isn't that, I mean, let me just stop you right there. Isn't that, and I agree with you 100%, but isn't that exactly why there's the classified marking? Because there's an indication that that information, whether directly or indirectly, could endanger somebody else. I mean, that's why it's marked classified in the beginning. So an individual who wants to leak that information, I mean, they don't have to put it through another test. They know because it's marked classified that it could endanger somebody's safety.
Absolutely, and that's why I say it's a very high bar, and I'm loath to say that a particular leak is acceptable, but I won't rule out the fact that it might be in some cases, and that's where the second prong of my test is. Second is, would leaking the information expose wrongdoing that needs to be exposed for our national security's sake? That, in other words, would exposing the information through a leak actually enhance or improve our national security? In this case, I think what the leaks did was got somebody out of government who didn't belong at the highest level, somebody who's a liar, who is clearly not responsible enough to handle sensitive information. That's what a whistleblower does. So I think in this case,
and I don't disagree with you. I don't disagree with you on the point about General Flynn. I mean, I think he put himself in a position where he was vulnerable to blackmail. I've said this almost every day on the show this week. If he told the Russians one thing, he told the administration the other thing. The Russians know the truth about both. That makes him vulnerable to blackmail. That's the danger. That's how he endangered our national security. It was the right thing for him to do, to resign. He should not have misled Vice President Pence. That's why Trump said this morning in his press conference, that's why he asked for his resignation. That's all good and well, but does this leak as a whole, I mean, to me it smacks of just political revenge here. Does this leak, this particular leak, does it meet the threshold of your two-pronged test that it's appropriate to leak this information?
I think it does, because if it weren't for the leaks, according to what the reporting has been, I don't think Flynn would be out. Trump knew about these lies 3 to 4 weeks ago. He was briefed on them by the Department of Justice that not only had Flynn lied, but that he was vulnerable to blackmail. And according to reporting that I saw recently, that the only reason Trump fired Flynn was because the story was about to come out. And the story was only about to come out because of the leaks. I think had Trump gotten rid of Flynn 3 weeks ago, there wouldn't have been a leak, because it wouldn't have been necessary in order to get Trump's attention to get rid of this threat to our national security. But I agree with you in general on the test. It's a very, very high bar. I do think this one meets it, though.
Right, and I don't think this one meets it. And I think President Trump did the right thing here. He asked General Flynn for his resignation. General Flynn tendered his resignation. It became a scandal, in my opinion, not because of the information about him talking to the Russian ambassador or the content of that phone call, but because he lied to Vice President Pence. And I believe that Pence was just made aware of that within the last week or so. That's the other thing, the other part of this, Ian, and you brought this up at the beginning. I do want to touch on this, and that's all these accusations of ties between the Trump campaign during the election and then the Trump administration now with the Russians. I would be the last person to deny that if that were the case. I do not think that we should be cozy with a nation that's clearly an adversary of ours. At the same time, the FBI investigated this during the campaign to see if top officials in the Trump campaign were colluding in any way with the Russians, and they found that they were not. I don't see any new evidence that points to the fact that they are.
Well, what we have solid evidence of is that the Russian government tried to interfere with our elections. We've had consensus from the
right,
director.
and nobody's arguing that, but I don't think that means that Donald Trump or his campaign or his administration was associated with that.
I think we certainly need more investigations to figure that out. If we're going to investigate claims that have no evidence, like voter fraud, because Trump believes them, then we need investigations of more serious claims that at least have some intelligence backing that suggests at least that they're worth investigating. But no, we don't have those ties solid yet. We need to know what happened. I hope Congress will investigate. We need to know the truth.
Right, and you don't think you don't feel that the FBI investigation presented the truth or investigated the truth enough?
I'm not 100% sure exactly that the conclusion is the way that you've depicted it. I've read some things that have suggested that the FBI put out some stories during the campaign that essentially squashed a New York Times article that was going to be run. And I don't want to rehash the stuff from the campaign. I think there's certainly enough there that you have Republican senators like McCain and Graham talking about the need for further investigation. If they think that there's a need for further investigation, I think that's pretty strong evidence that it's not unreasonable to pursue the matter.
No, I mean, I'm just looking for evidence. If there really is reason pointing to the fact that someone in the Donald Trump campaign or the Donald Trump administration had an inappropriate friendship, relationship, conversation, communication, whatever you want to call it, with Russian operatives, with officials in Russia, I think it warrants an investigation too. I just haven't seen evidence. All I've heard is the fact that the press is blaming Russia, that liberals are saying, oh, they're cozy with Russia because Trump wants to warm relations with Vladimir Putin. Well, Hillary Clinton did the same thing. She's the one that presented that, what did Trump call it, that dumb plastic reset button too. That in and of itself does not give me any evidence, give me any indication that there's an inappropriate relationship at play there.
Well, the reset button was in 2009. We're talking about Trump 2016. And I think, look, I agree with you. Until we have evidence, we can't say that anything has happened. So we're going to move forward there. But I don't want to just jump over what Flynn did, because it's not just about the lies. It is about the fact that he likely violated the Logan Act, which is the act that's essentially the one president at a time act. And if he was talking to Putin or Putin's people
right.
about the sanctions, then well, don't worry, Vladimir, there's no need for you to respond to the sanctions because we'll take care of them once Trump gets in. That's a violation of the Logan Act. Now,
I actually disagree with that. I don't think it's a violation of the Logan Act. Did you know that act has not actually been prosecuted? Nobody's been prosecuted under that act in over 200 years. Since the namesake of the act was prosecuted, he then went on to become a United States senator. So I don't think it was that big of a deal. I don't have a problem with Flynn's phone call. I mean, we don't actually know, either of us, anybody outside of the intelligence community at this time, what was said on that call. So I don't want to give the wrong impression here. From what I know right now of what he said, if he just discussed these sanctions, that's not unheard of. He wasn't an unauthorized citizen. That's the text from the Logan Act that says if an unauthorized citizen negotiates with a foreign nation that has a dispute with the United States, that's what constitutes a violation. He was well within the realm of his job. He was the incoming national security advisor. It's not a cold start on January 20th. You take many calls, you speak with many foreign leaders. That's normal. President Obama, before he was president-elect, when he was candidate Obama in 2008, did the same thing. He went to the Middle East. He met with leaders of foreign nations in the Middle East, talked about what type of relationship he'd like to have with them if they would just wait until November for his election and then wait until January for his inauguration. So I don't think that there was, I'm not a lawyer, but I don't think there was a violation of the Logan Act, and I don't have a problem with General Flynn having talked to the Russians. From what I know of the conversation, I do have a problem with him lying. I do have a problem with him being vulnerable to blackmail.
Sure, absolutely. I wasn't suggesting that General Flynn be clanked in irons here. I have read that experts think that he might have violated the act, and certainly his resignation is punishment enough. But I agree with you. I think the lying is a bigger issue. But there really is the question of, well, why didn't President Trump ask General Flynn to resign when he was told 3 or 4 weeks ago by the Department of Justice that he had A, lied, and B, was vulnerable to blackmail? Why did it have to wait until this week? Why did it have to wait until the leaks came out? That suggests that Trump is reacting more to the media story than to the substance of the lies. And that's disappointing to say the least, but also a bit scary in terms of a president who wouldn't act immediately on a potential blackmail threat.
Perhaps. I mean, perhaps you're correct. We'll have to wait and see. But it seems to me he's been in office for a month. He acted on this. He asked for the resignation. That's the right thing to do. It's been cleared up. Now people just want to use it as a big salacious story. Ian, I appreciate you having this conversation. It's always great to talk to you.